Okay, let's assume we have an undo log as shown in this page, and after system crashes, the system will know that crash recovery manager this program automatically, right? And this crash recovery manager this program will read this undo log from the bottom up, from the end. For the end line, we have this T2, X2, V2, right? But so far we haven't seen as this T2 yet before, right? We know this T2 is not completed. And the crash recovery manager will do is to recover this X2 to out of value V2 instead, right? Then we can read the second line from the bottom, T3, X3, V3. We have never marked this T3 as completed yet, right? We know it's incomplete. Then we can undo this action. We can recover this X3 to its old value, V3 instead. And we can read this line, commit T5. It means this T5 is completed, right? Then we can read this line, T4, X4, V4. We have never seen T4 before, right? We know this T4 is incomplete. Therefore, we will undo this action. We recover this X4 to its old value V4. Then we read this line, T5, X5, V5. However, we have seen the T5 before, and it is marked as completed, right? Because here we have this commit T5. And for this record, we have no actions at all. Then we can have the T1, X1, V1. Before we have never seen T1 yet, right? We know it's incomplete. We will undo this action. We recover X1 with V1, right? Its old value. We have start T4, start T5. We ignore them, and we can read further lines bottom up. You follow me, right? So we just follow the high-level idea we showed in the previous page or the lecture about how to do an undo for the crash recovery. We will read the log from the bottom up. We check each of the record entries in log file, and we mark each transaction as is completed or incomplete. For the completed transaction, we do nothing, right? However, for this incomplete transaction, we will undo the action or the effects by recover the entries or elements to the old value, like T2, T3, and T4, T1, right? For T5, we do nothing because we know it's completed. We have one commit T5 here, right? It will be similar for the remaining entries in log file. Okay, so this is the process to do the undo for the crash recovery based on the undo log. So before in the previous page, we have shown you with an example about how to do the crash recovery based on this undo log, right? We read the record from the bottom up for the undo log, and we also do the action for this incomplete transactions or records, right? And so we also have some reminder for you. So for this undo command, they are idempotent. In other words, if we perform them with several times, the harm is done actually. This is very important because during the crash recovery, we can still make some mistakes and the system can crash as well, right? In other words, we plan to recover the system back to a consistent state. However, at this moment, the system crashes again. Then the action we can do is very simple. We can just restart this recovery from scratch again, from the bottom up. Because no matter how many times we do this undo this action, there's no harm to the system, right? We just undo these incomplete transactions. No matter how many times we do that, there's no harm. We still have the same results and recover to the same consistent states. Then the main question in our mind will be, when will we stop reading the log file? Because we know the database system log file can be so long, right? They may have millions, even billions of records entries in log file. If we read this log file elements to the very beginning, then it will be very time consuming, right? We have to mark some points so we can stop reading the log file. We know at this moment the system is very safe. We don't need to further read up, right? So based on the previous page, we cannot stop reading the log file until we reach the beginning of the log file, right? This is impractical in the real world. And a better idea we have in mind will be we can use some checkpoints in the log file. We check some points we mentioned here. This system at this point is very safe, is secure, and well consistent. We don't necessarily need to further read the remaining entries in log file. This is very important. You can save lots of time for the system crash recovery, right? So So we can add some checkpoint into the log file. We add the checkpoint to the database system periodically and regularly. And so for some time we plan to insert some checkpoints into the log. We stop accept some new transactions. We'll wait until all the current transactions complete. Then we can flush an entry into the log file to the disk. We flush checkpoint to the log file. Then we can resume this transaction by accepting new transactions. So you can see the time point we add this checkpoint to the log file, right? Once we plan to add this checkpoint, we need to make sure all the current transactions running right now they are complete. And we will stop accepting new transactions. In other words, once we plan to write the checkpoint, the system has no transaction running at this moment, right? Also, all the transactions has been completed already. Okay, and after we do this insert this checkpoint to the file, then we can resume this regular accepting the new transactions, right? Okay, so this checkpoint is very important for the undo log. So we can still use the undo log we showed before. Before we mentioned that we have to read the undo log from bottom up and listen until we reach the beginning of the log file. However, if we have some checkpoints into the log file, we still read the entries from the bottom up. However, once we see we have these checkpoints, this entry, it means we don't necessarily need to further read the remaining entries. We know at this moment the system is consistent. What we plan to do is to recover the system to its point, right? Okay, so we read the entries from the bottom up. We undo many of the transactions T3, T2, T4, T1, right? However, for the transaction T5, we know it's complete. We don't need to do the undo for T5 anymore, right? The once we reach these checkpoints, we stop everything, right? We know at this moment, for this checkpoint, everything is good above it, right? So this checkpoint is very helpful. It can save lots of time for the crash recovery. And we also add this checkpoints regularly into the log file. Okay, so this is about undo.